A watchdog group is going after an article, a CNN hit piece against Bernie Sanders, that claims that Sanders told Elizabeth Warren that a woman cannot win the presidency. And so this, of course, has ignited new charges of sexism against the Bernie Sanders campaign. So now that article by CNN correspondent MJ Lee cited four anonymous staffers and friends of the candidate that claim that Bernie Sanders made that statement to Warren in a 2018 meeting at Elizabeth Warren's house, in which the candidates announced that they will, of course, both be running against each other. And so now that's kind of interesting that didn't come out back then, that suddenly it comes out now. Bernie Sanders is leading in Iowa and is doing really, real well in New Hampshire and other states. Fascinating, right? So now the watchdog in question is FAIR, the Foundation for Accuracy in Reporting. They went after this piece saying in an article in their headline that it doesn't pass the smell test, which is another way to say complete and utter horse crap. All right, so now let me examine why that is. Now, for one, these staffers that were cited were not actually there. They weren't actually in the meeting. They weren't even there to witness this. Two of them, according to Lee, spoke to Warren shortly after the meeting. The other two sources were described only as people who, quote, knew about the meeting. So you've got very, very weak sourcing here that was not firsthand knowledge. That were, and by the way, they're completely anonymous sources. They were not even in the room. So how can CNN stand by this reporting? I'm starting to get a little bit more sympathetic to Trump supporters who are saying, well, the fake news against President Trump, you're citing anonymous sources that weren't even in the room. Ugh, they might have a point, and that's disastrous, and I hate everything about it. So now, Sanders, of course, issued a denial to CNN, who, by the way, this is now apparently what passes for journalism in CNN. Like, that's disastrous. Now, he said this, quote, "It is ludicrous to believe that at the same meeting where Elizabeth Warren told me she was going to run for president, that I would tell her that a woman couldn't win. It's sad that 3 weeks before the Iowa caucus and a year after that private conversation, staff who weren't even in the room are lying about what happened." Very strong words from Sanders. What did I say? What I did say that night was that Donald Trump is a sexist, a racist, and a liar who would weaponize whatever he could. Do I believe a woman could win in 2020? Of course. After all, Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump by 3 million votes in 2016. So look, that's the point, right? He was saying Donald Trump will lie about you. He will use sexist smears. He will attack you in every way possible. So that's going to make it difficult for any candidate, and not just Elizabeth Warren, not just a woman, right? And we see what he did to Hillary Clinton. And so, yes, he was making that point to say it's going to be a very difficult campaign. That was not saying, that's not the same thing as saying a woman can't win, which again is not at all what he said. So now, obviously, I'm going to believe Bernie Sanders over some rando sources that weren't even in the room. And it's not just because I like Bernie Sanders. It's because in no situation has Bernie Sanders ever said anything remotely like that. In fact, there's a lot of evidence, a lot of video evidence to the contrary, and I'm going to show that to you now. This is Bernie Sanders back in 1988 as he was announcing his support for the Jesse Jackson campaign. Take a look.
The real issue is not whether you're black or white, whether you're a woman or a man. In my view, a woman could be elected president of the United States. The real issue is, whose side are you on? Are you on the side of workers and poor people, or are you on the side of big money and the corporation?
1988 Bernie sounds a lot like 2019 and 2020 Bernie. You know why? That's because they're the same. Bernie Sanders has been consistent throughout his entire career saying the same things. Back in 1998 saying, look, I don't care if you're a woman can win. A woman can definitely win. But it matters whose side you're on, if you're on the side of the people or you're on the side of the corporations. And unfortunately, there are a lot of politicians that happen to be on the side of the corporations, and those are the ones that are smearing Bernie Sanders. So now, I'm not done. I've got Another piece of evidence here, this is Bernie Sanders in 1987 telling a group of kids that a woman has as much right to become president as a man. Take a look.
One other woman governor, the mayor of San Francisco is a woman, and there are many women mayors, but not enough. And one of the very important things, and I hope that all the girls in this class understand, that you, just as much as the boys, have a right to become president. There's not been a woman president, although there was a woman who was giving thought to running for president this time, from Colorado, a woman named Representative Schroeder gave some thought. So I hope that the girls will think that they have the right to be involved in politics quite as much as the boys do. It's beginning to change, but it's not changing fast enough.
You notice there at the end, it's beginning to change, but it's not changing fast enough. Basically, he's saying the opposite of what he's being charged of, that he wants more women involved in politics. And he's saying, look, you have just as much right as a woman to be involved in politics, and you should be involved in politics, and you have as much right as a man to become president of the United States. That's Bernie Sanders in 1987 saying the same thing that he was saying in 1988, that he's been saying in 1998, that he's been saying in 2008, that women can definitely become president of the United States, and that more women and young people should be involved in politics. That's why Bernie Sanders has supported people like AOC and Rashida Tlaib. They supported her, or I'm sorry, he supported them. Now they support him. It's ridiculous to continue to throw around this charge of sexism towards the Bernie Sanders campaign when there's so much evidence out there of the opposite, that he does fight for reproductive rights, and not just for reproductive rights, but for positions of power for women. And the only prerequisite is that you have to be on the side of regular working people. If you're on the side of the corporations, it doesn't matter. If you're a woman, if you're black, if you're Latino, whatever, you're on the wrong side because you're serving the wrong people and not the actual citizens. That's Bernie Sanders' message. I don't care who you are. I'm with you if you're with us and the working class and regular people. And so this is ridiculous, man. The entire smear, right? So now, here's the thing. Anybody who knows Bernie Sanders knows that this is not, that the smears are not Bernie Sanders' character, right? That's not who he is. He's not a sexist person. Now, Elizabeth Warren claims to know Bernie, claims to be very close to Bernie, right? And yet she released a statement on this. And she says, well, I don't want to talk about this private meeting. Wait, you don't want to talk about it? You're the one person who could come back and say, hey, you know what? I was obviously there in that meeting. I was the one in the meeting talking with Bernie Sanders. And no, he did not say that. He said that, Trump is sexist, misogynist, whatever. But no, he never said that a woman cannot win the presidency. She could come out and solve this problem. And it speaks a lot of her that she has not, that she's decided to, not say, oh, no, yeah, this definitely happened. That's exactly what he said. Because, of course, that would be a 100% lie. So she says, I want to talk about it. Absolutely no political courage. How about you start having some integrity and standing up for your friend? I mean, this is deeply disappointing, especially when, again, there's so much evidence out there showing that Bernie Sanders is a strong feminist ally. And so what this does, by the way, this makes people wary of being feminists. Why? Because all they see is dishonest actors out there, in the media especially, using it as a weapon against good, honest progressives. And that's not feminism. That's the opposite of feminism. When you weaponize it against other people who don't deserve it, no. The whole point of feminism is to build people up, not to tear them down, especially the people who are your strongest allies. This is a deeply disappointing look for Elizabeth Warren and the establishment as well. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm, messing around with view counts, etc. We're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.